right, well, let's kick us off then. So welcome everyone to a webinar on how do I recruit for AI and how does it recruit for me? I am Evie. I am going to be hosting us today. As a quick introduction, I am a director at Talentful. I've spent my career scaling high growth technology businesses, large and small, across Europe and the US, and I'm currently based out of New York. For the last 3 years, I have led Talentful's Alphabet portfolio, driving the project strategy, providing consultation and advisory on all things talent acquisition and best practices, and leading high performance talent teams for the likes of Google DeepMind and X Moonshot Factory. So AI and TA are two topics close to my heart, as it's been a space I've been operating in for some time, and I'm super excited to unpack it today with Elena. So I am joined here by our brilliant speaker, Elena. Would you like to give us a quick introduction to yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Elena. I am the director of recruiting for Labelbox. So Labelbox, we are an AI platform for data annotation, labeling, pretty much doing everything you need to get to a functioning, performing AI. I've been with the company for close to 3 years, which in startup years seems a lot. I'm very excited for this journey still. And yeah, I'm originally from Romania. I've recruited across Europe and then in the US. I have a distributed team, so I'm a big advocate for remote work and of course AI. So I'm very excited to dig into this.
Awesome. So this webinar is brought to everyone by Talentful. At Talentful, we're inventing the future of recruitment. Our innovative approach revolutionizes traditional commission-based models with flexible, scalable solutions via subscriptions. Partnering with global leaders like Alphabet, Checkout.com, Atlassian, and more, we accelerate the growth of ambitious companies at every stage. All right, so here's our agenda for the next hour. We'll be kicking ourselves off with a deep dive of the AI landscape and how to compete for and effectively hire AI talent. We'll move on to how AI can augment the TA workflow, sharing some actionable insights on how AI can recruit for you. And then closing out with, I think, both of our favorite topic, which is doubling down on the human in the TA lifecycle. We're going to have some time for questions at the end as well. Please use the Q&A box instead of the chat for your questions, and we'll do our best to answer all of them if we can. So I'm going to stop sharing now so I can just see your face, Elena. So yeah, we're starting big with the AI landscape. Of course, we're not going to cover everything in the next hour, but AI has long had its place in popular culture, and only recently have we experienced it move out of the pages of sci-fi and into our everyday lives. It's hard to go a week or even a day lately without the mention of AI, especially if you spend time on LinkedIn, which us TA folks do. But how far have we come from sci-fi books to replacing humans in the workforce, which I think is the scaremongering that we experience. So, Elena, what is the reality of artificial intelligence in our industry right now, and how rapidly have you seen this evolve?
Yeah, I think that's a great starting point. It's kind of like almost debunking, we always hear like AI is going to take over the world, we're going to get replaced and so on. But the reality is when you actually are in the industry and see how much work needs to go into getting a model to function properly, like I would know with Labelbox, like it's really like we're far away from that. So I wouldn't worry, just to put everyone at ease. I think I see it as a tool, a very powerful tool, but a tool nonetheless. And so depending how you're using it, it could make I see it more efficient, maybe more polished. I like to use ChatGPT for my emails, for example. So, there's a lot of different applications. And I have been seeing a lot more products based on like using AI, especially in the TA space. So that's super exciting because I feel like talent has been, I don't know, almost kind of, it's almost like an afterthought. When you think about technological advancements, you don't necessarily think about talent immediately, right? And so I'm really happy to see it in this new wave of generative AI and just, with targeted products for recruiting, so it's very exciting. And I think everyone should be excited and really be curious and embrace change and new developments.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if we think about the traditional approach to AI, it involves building ever larger models. And that is really, really high cost. The cost of training and deploying these models is so beyond what just everyday companies can do. But as a result, and this is, I think, the revolution we're experiencing now, researchers are turning their attention to making AI models more efficient rather than simply bigger. So I think, this could lead to a new era of AI development where we're able to achieve this superhuman performance without requiring the massive amounts of resources. And I think that's why we're seeing this shift into more of the startup space, or equally the startup space, as well as big tech. So I think, the kind of debunking, which I think we wanted to start with here, ChatGPT, it wasn't long before I brought it up, of course, but it's stoking fears. I think some people are loving it, some people are fearing it, but there's been lots of studies that show that historically the deep learning boom in 2010 created loads of job opportunities. So there's a lot of swirl in the news in AI, and I'm personally skeptical of some of it. So what are you paying attention to, and what are you not paying attention to?
I think I'm very fortunate just being at Labelbox. Our whole team is, one of our core values is seek to understand, and that obviously can be applicable internally, externally, but specifically for the industry is really cool and very easy to absorb all the new things that are coming, because everyone in my team in recruiting, but also in the broader company, everyone is up to speed with what's happening in AI, like not only for our competitors, but what are people, how are people using it? What are some use cases? And we're lucky to be able to work with very awesome companies. And if you look on our website, not to be super self-promotional, but just to kind of drive the point that AI is everywhere, basically. If you look on our use cases on our website, we have customers from agriculture to medical to, marketing and fashion. So it's really everywhere if you really want to employ it and use it as a tool. Again, it's a tool. So it's really cool to be surrounded by everyone who's like curious and wants to learn about, what's happening in the industry. So it's, I think that's my happy place. I don't necessarily need to go do my own, I do for specifically talent, but like industry wise, I can definitely rely on my team to kind of keep me up to speed and also learn like how things evolve, how Labelbox evolves with us. And so with that, and so it's it's always a learning opportunity, I think, especially now with this boom. There's always something new happening every day. So it's pretty cool to witness and also be a part of it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think we spent some time talking about generative AI, and I think that's one of the most fascinating things to come out of this AI boom and the advancements of large language models. I talked a bit about the VC space. I have some fun facts here to share. And I guess this lends itself to the idea that it's not just big tech engaging in the AI revolution, just as Labelbox is. So VCs are reportedly pouring 2.5 billion per month into AI, and there's been 12.7 billion in venture funding for generative AI startups this year alone, which is a major jump from the 4.8, but this seems like monopoly money, 4.8 billion invested in all of 2022. So as a result, there's a bevy of AI job openings offering really high comp positions. We know, being in talent acquisition, that the market is slow to catch up to the economy and to the kind of changing tides of this space. And this creates incredible competition for qualified candidates. So what's your predictions on how this AI revolution is going to impact the talent marketplace?
So if we're thinking about the talent more from like a candidate pool perspective, I think that kind of applies to everything actually. It's going to be probably two groups, right? Like the engineers who embrace LLMs and just, all of the new stuff that is coming out. And they leverage that to become, more efficient, smarter, whatever you want to call it. And then the other group, unfortunately, I think it's more in that fear group where they're like, I don't know how to use it. Like, it's better if I just build it from scratch, like, kind of that mentality. I don't think that's going to go super well for that group. So my recommendation is to just, really embrace it and see things with curiosity and exploration through that lens and see how that tool can help you. So I think that's what we're seeing also from our, I guess in our interviewing process as well. We have seen certain candidates who don't really know what's going on, which is kind of interesting to see. They're not really in the loop, which, as you said, is pretty impossible not to know what's going on, especially if you just open LinkedIn. It's just like everything is there. And then other candidates who are like already very comfortable using, for example, ChatGPT, and we had to adapt our interview process to match that speed, that technology, those tools available. And so it's been a very interesting process, but it's really hard to make any predictions. And I kind of want to stay away from that because it's a very powerful tool and it really depends on people's creativity and how they're going to use it. So from that, like, who knows what's going to come,
Yeah, there was something that I saw recently that I thought was really interesting. It was Business Insider said that there's companies paying up to $375,000 per year for a prompt engineer. And that was a new one to me. And it's essentially training AI chatbots to improve their responses. And it doesn't require a degree, and it certainly doesn't require a technical degree. Are you seeing any changes like that in the actual job roles or technical tech company job roles coming up?
I would say for us, we're a platform. And so if you really think from a product lens, we hire software engineers, obviously within our tech stack, but we didn't really go too much on the hype of let's hire, all of the researchers or all of the AI practitioners or machine learning. Like it's very tempting, I think, to just go for kind of the new thing, but really we're a product-led company. So we're always bringing it back to what do we need to build? What is that skill set that we need? And kind of, go from there. I put a lot of work into the team to really spend time on that scoping process and scoping phase. And so I guess I'm lucky from that perspective that we don't really, go for the shiny thing. But, there are more kind of research leaning companies or products. And I think that's where that competition is very fierce. I think we're in this fortunate position where we can figure it out without going into that. My personal preference is to really come back to the skill set and avoid even going into that not competitive, but like overly competitive, when everyone's going for the same very small pool of talent. I kind of, take a step back and think like, is this really what we need? If it is, then great. I'm going full speed ahead. I'm in there. But if it's not, then why focus on our time and energy on things that we don't need, So I think I guess the recommendation for hiring generally is to really take a look at what you need, what you have on the team already, what's that gap between that and what you want to have to be able to deliver on your product roadmap. I think, that's a good way to kind of keep it leveled and kind of not getting swept up into the craziness.
Yeah. And there's so much that is open sourced nowadays as well, where if you have really great production software engineers, they still have the tools at their fingertips to still engage. So on that topic of job title, skill sets, I did a quick LinkedIn Insight search, and again, I'm skeptical of the results sometimes, but I tapped in job titles, AI engineer and researcher, which is a slither of that, this job family. But it told me that there's 3,500 people with that job title in the US and 650 jobs. It also said that the demand for this talent is deemed extremely high, and around 20% of that talent is in the San Francisco Bay Area, go figure, and then about 10% is in New York. Something else I saw, according to Reuters, is that generative AI related job postings in the United States jumped about 20% in May. And I think we're probably going to see a trend upwards from here. So you've talked about competition for this talent, even if it's not necessarily your kind of research-led talent, but even your production engineers. How do you compete for this sought after talent, and what does this talent want in this current market?
Yeah, I think everyone who's in this, they're very excited to be able to explore and build new things. Mm-hmm. And if you're going for that talent, but you can't offer that opportunity, then there's going to be a mismatch. So you're going to lose. I think it's always that, kind of coming back to what I was saying, it's always that finding that match between what you can offer and the talent that you can get. And so it needs to be, a win-win. That's how I see hiring. It's not just me filling seats. Like, that's boring and not very human-like. And so I always think about, what do you want as a candidate who, and every company in the world is like wanting you. How can I be there, in like your top 3 maybe, and see how we can go from there. So if you think from that perspective and try to find, okay, what can we actually offer? I think that gives you a pretty good, transparent, honest point of view. And I think that can go a long way. I've been in pretty tough negotiations, as I'm sure you have as well, with certain candidates, where you just go against all the resources in the world, and you're like a tiny startup, and you win. Yeah. How do you win? It's that connection, is really listening to the candidate and really connecting the dots for what they want and what you can offer. That goes a super long way. So I think that's probably the same approach I would take in this case if we were to lean more on the research hiring. It's really, at the end of the day, we're all people, humans trying to do cool stuff. So, if we can do it together, great. If not, then we need to kind of find an alternative.
Yeah, definitely. And aside from, addressable market issues that we have, successfully attracting, interviewing and retaining this talent is the next challenge. And that's where, we spend most of our time. So what has been your experience with successfully actually recruiting AI, ML talent, and what's been successful, unsuccessful?
Yeah, I think, well, with Labelbox, it's been a very interesting journey to kind of see, us evolve with the industry. We started actually as a training data platform. So kind of what you were saying in the beginning, we were coming from this big data era where everyone just wanted to collect more and more data. And now they have so much data, but they can't use it because it's not labeled. And so that's where Labelbox came in. That's how we started. And then from data labeling only, we evolved to have so many other products. And I think that really helped. Obviously, we couldn't have done that without the existing team, but having that opportunity for the team to contribute to evolving the overall company and our products and developing new products, I think that offered that kind of excitement factor and, kept people engaged and kept our team in place and with us over the years. So I think that, that evolution is probably the key word that I would go for in this whole thing. As you mentioned, everything happens so fast, and we have booms of like different, things that people all gravitate towards. Now is generative AI, but who knows what's going to be next. And so how do we keep our people excited, engaged, And I think that also contributes to attracting new talent, because if a candidate sees, oh my God, everyone is super excited to be here, and they've been with a company for 3+ years, which in startup life, that's a lot. And that, again, that goes a long way. So I think it's more of that we need to, and we can, I think I'm going a bit too far away with like the human touch. But that's really, I think, the differentiator, when everyone has access to the same technology and everything. Are you going to use it? And if so, like, what makes you different,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, we're going to switch gears to section number 2, which is using AI to augment the TA workflow. While it's easy to feel intimidated by the advancements of AI and resist the tides of change, those who work with AI are the ones who will remain relevant and successful. AI can, as we've talked about, AI can be a really powerful tool for talent acquisition and can significantly improve the efficiency, productivity, and scalability. In my opinion, the first step in using AI in your favor is education, which I think we've already touched on, and taking the time to investigate and experiment with tools and techniques and systems, and stay skeptical sometimes to what you're seeing. But as admittedly a non-technical person working in a high-tech industry, which a lot of talent acquisition professionals are, of course, we're people, not technical people always, most of the time. I'll be honest that sometimes it's an intellectual stretch for me, particularly when I first started engaging in this industry. So Elena, talk to me a bit about how you have educated yourself and your team on these advancements in technology and AI, and how you stay ahead of the curve that way.
Yeah, I think, well, let's talk about ChatGPT, because I think that's the one that everyone knows, right? And so my team is very curious about everything that's going on in the TA space and in our industry. Specifically, one of my technical recruiters, she's all over it. Like, she thrives on that. So I'm very fortunate to have her on my team. She was actually one of the early adopters on my team of ChatGPT and kind of finding use cases for like how we can use it. And I think it's kind of interesting I've seen, just in my team, which is very small, like one person being kind of the advocate. I have another few people who are like, yeah, this is interesting, but like, how do I approach this? So it's been a very cool thing to see them kind of sharing and learning from each other, and obviously throw me in the mix as well. We had an offsite, my recruiter, she did a whole session on prompt engineering, but specifically for our team, like how we can use it specifically for our projects and so on. And now my whole team is using it in everything that they do. So honestly, for the more complicated concepts, there's a cool trick with ChatGPT. You can say, just, explain large language models to me like I was 5, and it simplifies it like so much, and you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So it's kind of interesting. You can use these tools that you're kind of skeptical about to really make you understand, like how things work. I'm not an engineer by any means, but I have a decent understanding of how the model works, under the hood. But again, I couldn't have done that with ChatGPT, which is kind of like a nice, funny, cyclical way of working there. So I think it's, again, kind of coming back to that curiosity, being open to see and learning, like things that is not like I could have learned about LLMs and AI in school, right? Like that just was a thing back then. And so we're always needing to stay on top of what's happening. And I think that's probably one of the most valuable, maybe skill set, maybe traits, however you want to categorize it, for anyone really, to still be relevant and help, especially as talent people, to really help the company, evolve with the trends, stay on top of everything. So it's, I think, a big responsibility, but it's also, I see it part of, life generally, but especially my work. I need to know what's happening. I need to understand how things work, and I need to be able to explain it to other candidates and sell it. And so, we have a lot of resources internally as well for our products, but also about the industry. So just honestly, it's very easy right now. There's so much information out there. It's really just coming back to that curiosity and willingness to learn that's going to set people apart, long term. So yeah, that's, I know it's pretty vague, but
no, it's using the tools themselves to learn that's really interesting about this space. And I think once we've been out of formal education for some time, it's quite hard to explore something so dense and technical. Whereas I think if you're trying to learn something, if it's applicable and useful and relevant, we'll retain the information a lot more. Something that I've been getting a lot of value from recently is a daily newsletter called TLDR AI. It's a 5-minute read each morning with my coffee. It covers headlines and launches, research and innovation, and then any helpful resources. And it's really well curated and bite-sized. And it's good for me to know, where is the VC money going? Like, what startups are here? Where can I go and find talent? Where's relevant talent for the companies in my portfolio? So it's relevant and applicable, and it's an easy way to learn. I'm not sponsored, I promise. Go look for TLDR AI. So obviously we've talked about how AI can augment our workflow, and it can in many ways in different places. So where do you think AI is best placed within the TA lifecycle, and where do you foresee it making the most impact?
I think there's a lot of opportunity in the TA space. Mainly, I think that everyone in the space will probably agree, hopefully, that there's a lot of admin work still to be able to, just focus on the candidate and offer a great candidate experience. There's still a lot of back-end admin work that needs to happen, making sure the ATS and all of these things. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for automation there on the candidate experience, somehow matching, your activity, maybe your communication with the candidate, and not have to just get away with the manual stuff. I feel like that would be my absolute dream. But I have seen a lot of cool products also on the sourcing side of things with generative AI. And I think it's really, I'm thinking of one in particular. It's called Kavi. Again, not sponsored, not affiliated, but I've seen it do a lot of cool stuff on the sourcing side with generative AI. And the reason I like it is because it can go beyond the Boolean search. And so, for example, we all, or most of us, want product experience, right? Even if you're looking for engineering or whatever. And so how do you find that product-led company easily with a Boolean? You can't. You need to go on Crunchbase, pull a list, add that to, it's the whole thing. So they've basically streamlined that, and they use natural language, and we don't need to build Booleans anymore. And it's amazing. It's a different life. I can't describe it, So I think that's a great one to really elevate how we're doing sourcing, how we're searching for candidates. And then we're also using a tool on the scheduling piece, scheduling interviews. That has made my team so much more efficient. Just that back and forth of gathering availability, comparing it to the interviewer's calendar. I get tired just describing it, but it automates that, and it just gives you a few options, and you select the best one, and you're good to go. It takes us 2 minutes to schedule a day of interviews, basically. So I think there's still a lot of opportunity, though. I wouldn't probably go as far as maybe the negotiation part. So I wouldn't want to negotiate with a model, with the chatbot, however you want to call it. I still want that human connection, and I want that human connection throughout the process. But I think all of these tools can really free up the recruiters so they can actually focus on that human connection and really listen for, what that candidate wants, and really forming that relationship and growing it and making it natural human interaction rather than, hello candidate, are you interested in this job? No, that doesn't go, so far. And yeah, those are, I think we're just scratching the surface. It's just the
Yeah.
beginning. So I'm very excited to see what else is going to come in this space with
Mm.
generative AI. But yeah, those are
Yeah.
my top probably.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I want, you've already talked a bit about how your team have been using our AI, beloved AI chatbots. I want to go deeper on that because that's something that me and my team did as well. We were like, okay, let's think of some use cases, and some really interesting ideas came out of it. Is that how have you been leveraging it, and how is, because there's experimentation and then there's actual execution and implementing it into a process and it being successful. Has there been any like tips or tricks that you can share with how you've leveraged it successfully for TA?
Yeah. So one of the first things that we started seeing early on is certain candidates using it during the process.
Yeah.
And we were like, interesting. Like, how do we assess that? How do we level the playing field? Because not everyone was using ChatGPT during their interviews. So, how do we have a structured interview process, but this kind of throws a wrench in the whole thing because it's not a very, kind of equal way of assessing candidates. If some are using certain things, some not, whatever. And so what we did, we took all of our interview questions and asked our interviewers to take them, go through those exercises with ChatGPT and see what the response was. And we actually ended up eliminating a few of them just because they were so easy. Like ChatGPT immediately got it, like you get the job type response. And so we had to eliminate those. And the ones that were not quite there, we kept because those are still relevant for what we need to test in that interview. The difference is that we had to coach our interviewers to deal with that sort of situation. Meaning, if a candidate does use ChatGPT in their interview, are you assessing the same thing? Like, or do you need to, like, if you already have a baseline of an answer, right? Like, what do? You need to go deeper. You need to ask follow-up questions. You really need to investigate how they think about the whole, answering the whole question. What's their thinking process? What's their approach? What's their structure? Are they honest about using ChatGPT, right? Like, we're not, we actually are very transparent in our hiring practices. And so all of our team uses ChatGPT. It would be kind of funny to say to candidates, you can't use it, but we need to embrace it, and we need to know like how to adapt to candidates using it. So that was a very effective project for us because we already knew, what questions work, what don't, and what to do for candidates who use it. And now we're good. Now everyone knows like what to do, and it's been actually a very fun experience to see different candidates and how they use it.
Yeah, because ultimately you want your employees, your engineers to be most efficient with their work. So, once they're here, you're like, yeah, absolutely use a tool. So it seemed counterproductive to say, but you can't use these tools to get the job or to interview.
It kind of makes
that's hard.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of makes me think in a funny way of the old school kind of whiteboard exercises. Right? Because and you base everything on memory. So are you assessing memory, or are you assessing their code writing ability? And I mean, there's no secret. We have Substack, we have GitLab, we have all of these other, resources that we leverage on a daily basis. So, let's embrace it. Let's not pretend we're better than everyone else because we use the same tools. So, I think that's, and I think, well, my team is a little bit interesting because we kind of, our work goes beyond just hiring. So we've been working on a competency framework. So for us, it started with recruiting, obviously, figuring out the scorecard of a role when you start hiring, but we took that and wanted to expand it beyond the candidate experience, beyond hiring, into also the employee experience, into performance management. So it's a huge project. We've been working on it for almost a year now. But ChatGPT was part of the team with that one because it's very text heavy. You need to have a certain tone across all of these different teams. It's been a very, very helpful tool. And I wish we had it like last year when we started working on it, but better late than never. But yeah, it really, you can use it on anything.
Yeah. I think it's going to be so interesting to see how it disrupts our tech stack. And, things like technical testing, are they now going to integrate these generative AI tools and technologies into technical testing tools? So on that note, how do you go about building your own tech stack for TA? And are there any tools that you've implemented that you rate highly, not rate highly?
Yeah, so we did a bit of a revamp recently of our tech stack. We're always looking, we need to stay on top of tools, but I think we also need to be very intentional because there's so many options out there. It's very easy to kind of go crazy. So for me, I need to make sure that we're using the most efficient tools and the least amount of tools, right? And so one of my favorite is the scheduling one that I mentioned. It's called Modern Loop. And absolutely recommend it. Yes, I can talk about it forever. And other than that, we don't have any kind of flashy, tools in our stack for recruiting. We're using Greenhouse, Gem, LinkedIn Recruiter, Modern Loop, and that's really kind of it. We're exploring some offer or visualization tools just to help with that negotiation piece and make it a little bit nicer, beyond the spreadsheets. But yeah, that's really it. I think, as a talent leader, I need to make sure that my team has everything they need to be successful and not overwhelm them with like all of the stuff that's out there. So I need to be that curator for them and make sure that everything connects well and it doesn't break and we don't lose candidates and we offer a great candidate experience. So that was the puzzle that I had to put together, which is why very straightforward, nothing too flashy, but always open to explore new tools for sure.
Yeah. The skeptic in me doesn't want to be a guinea pig for these new tools. And I almost want to, I'm like, that theoretically sounds brilliant. And I'm going to let that mature for a while and train some of those models for a while before I invest. Because I think, with newer, obviously we want to support the TA and tech ecosystem here. But yeah, I definitely think that some of the newer models don't fill the gap as well as a Saucer would or an RC would in terms of that whole workflow. So I'm paying attention to some of the good ones, but I'm like, mature a little bit perhaps first.
So yeah, we've been a little bit more adventurous on that. We actually worked with someone who was just that kind of at the ideation phase for a product for recruiting. It was an interesting experience, but it was a lot of time invested. So balancing that out, I think it's key. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that because that made me think of this. I was like, oh yeah, we kind of went for that once.
And it's good to give back because if those companies are successful, our whole industry will be successful. So it's good to give back, but be selective.
Have a balance.
Balance. So if you could wave a magic wand and create any product, whether it's even possible now or not, based on what we know about the tech, to augment the TA workflow, what would it be?
That's a great question. Probably something that would completely take care of that ATS maintenance. So maybe something that I connect with my email and text and whatever. So if I, talk to a candidate, if I send them an email to say, congratulations, like the interview went well, we're ready to move forward to the next stage, it would automatically move the candidate to the next stage. So I wouldn't even have to live in my ATS, that would be great. So maybe soon. I don't know.
We'll see.
I think To me, that's the biggest part. I think it's that, as I said, that admin piece is really, I wish I could just like wave a magic wand and make it disappear, but we're not there yet, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that everyone in every industry is like, if I could get rid of admin, that would be great.
Yeah,
We're coming up on time, so I want to move on to our last section, doubling down on the human. So as we've discussed for the past 40 minutes, AI can be a really powerful tool to accelerate and augment what we do as recruiting professionals. But at the heart of good TA fundamentally is connecting humans. If I'm to think optimistically about the AI revolution in our industry, I think advancement in AI can essentially reduce administrative load so that we can increase the human touch. So what does the human touch mean to you in this context?
yeah, I think this is really one of the biggest, most important things, the human touch in like hiring, because we can automate, we can bring all the tools that we need and whatever, but people still are looking for, they're going to work with people, and they need to get an idea of how that would look like for them if they were to join your company. And I think this is what we need to bake into that interview process, is really showcasing the best parts of ourselves and being honest about the not so great parts, because nobody's perfect, and really provide the candidate with every opportunity to really learn about us, as at the same time we're learning about them, and kind of making sure it's that common connection and match. Then everyone is happy. And this is obviously very vague and not, but it's very applicable to TA. We work with so many different people all day, every day, and we obviously need to make sure we have the right talent in place for our company. But also, you can't just, you can't ignore that you're impacting someone's life. They're taking on a new job. For them is like a whole different new chapter. So, being really aware of that, and that experience for candidates, I think can create a lot of empathy and really open us up to having a connection with that candidate. And so when you go into those tough negotiations, it's not like, I don't even like to talk about compensation immediately when I know they're interviewing with like big companies. I'm like, what do you want? Like, let's forget about money for a second, but what are your top 3 priorities? And generally that's, spending time with family. So having flexible schedule or remote, or, they're nomadic or whatever it is, so that lifestyle is, and being able to accommodate that, I think that goes a long way. So I don't know, human can mean a lot of different things, like being human, but I think that empathy is really hard to automate. So yeah.
It takes me back to my training as a recruiter, and just the fundamentals of recruiting, the hierarchy of needs, where it's really about understanding what a human wants, and what they want in their life, in work. And I think this is something that's really exciting, because the more time that we can spend in understanding a person, spending more time with them, being able to talk to them more on the phone or on a meet versus just over email, I think it's just going to increase our ability to hire the right people and impact other metrics that are really important to us, like quality of hire, not just efficiency of process. So Utopian State, we've automated all of the repeatable manual tasks in the TA workflow. One day, maybe. What is left, and how is that going to change the design of a talent team?
Well, I think talent teams are going to be lean. Like I've seen, and I've been a part of very, very big kind of army of recruiters. And, that makes sense for a certain size company. But I think even that, kind of coming back to that productivity, that's going to be, we're going to be able to do more with less, essentially. And I think that's a good thing, because, it's really hard to manage a very big team. of recruiters specifically. You know, you have to have all of these like managers and groups and everything. It just becomes a very heavy system. Whereas if you keep it lean, make sure they're enabled and empowered by the necessary tool stack, I think that would increase the quality of their work and their happiness, because, you know, it's I can do so much more. Like my impact is so much greater, and I'm not competing with like all of these other people who are on my same team, right? So I think it creates more of a collaboration environment if you take away all of that, I don't know, weird internal competitiveness. I don't really like that. The way I lead my teams is really, we are together, like this is what the company needs. Let's figure it out how we can achieve that. That's how I like it. I don't like oh yeah, this is the goal. If you don't get that, then you know you're not doing great. There's so much more that goes into recruiting, so many variables. And it kind of comes back to that human in the loop of, you know, just making, like, even knowing that your candidate is due for the final stages, right? And you send them a Starbucks or like a coffee, whatever, before, and you say, good luck, this is to keep you energized through, you know, the 3 hours. That's a super nice touch. It doesn't take a lot, but it does take, you know, just mental capacity to be able to think about that, right? So if you're burdened with all of the admin and competition and whatever, you don't have that openness and thoughtfulness to really focus on your candidate. So yeah, it's I don't know. I'm very excited about how this is going to look like. I think, you know, candidates are also excited because the recruiting process kind of is the same everywhere now. So these tiny little human touches, I think, are going to make a big difference. So it's really about how much of that we want to invest in, you know, our time. So
yeah, I love that. I think I can see there being a bigger investment in TA ops, and then because you know building and maintaining the engine to do what you do, and then there's just you know more focus on those wow moments and the candidate experience, you know, getting back to that really high touch red carpet candidate experience. And I think you can only really craft that truly with that human focus.
I think that's that's so true. My team is very small at the moment. I have 2 recruiters, but I already have a recruiting ops manager. And kind of to what you were saying, that it has made such a big difference to know that she owns all of that, you know, from contract negotiation to like getting feedback from the team, making sure everyone is happy with that, you know, with the decisions. Like that's been amazing, and I highly recommend looking into that for all, you know, talent leaders, because it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so we've just hit 10 minutes left, so we're going to move over to some questions. I think I've seen one come in through the chat, so I'll go there first from Magali. How can you effectively communicate the benefits of AI tools to stakeholders or team members who are reluctant to adopt these technologies and new processes? What is your top tip?
Yeah, I generally think about, kind of similar to candidates, I think about my stakeholders and what they want to see. Generally, and this can be like a very high level generalization, but generally, especially business partners, they want to see productivity faster, essentially, right? And efficiency. So however you measure that for your team, that can be a very good kind of point of view to kind of enter that conversation and say, oh, you know, we care about efficiency in our recruiting process. You know, the classic, we need to do more with less. This is how I can empower my team to support the hiring process and the hiring needs of the company. Is we either, you know, hire another person, hire another recruiter, or we look at our tech stack, right? And so when you put it like that, then it becomes a business conversation. You're talking about resources, you're talking about budgets, you're talking about the benefits for the business, right? It's not just about you and your team and like, oh, I want to use something new. right? It's like what this can do for my team, and then what my team can do for you as the business if we get this. So kind of communicating, I would say, the trade-offs, the options, and obviously making a recommendation, because that's why you're in a leadership position, is to make sure that that function is supporting the business. And so how can you do that? Like really communicate that in your recommendation. So I've done a lot of, especially with the tool stack, it's a lot of, proposals and budgets and like meetings, but it's worth it if that's, something that you really want to get done. You should go through that process. Yeah. I hope that helped.
And I think something that I've been thinking about recently is thinking like a CFO. Easier said than done, because I don't know how a CFO thinks. But, when it comes to tools, I know a CFO is going to say, what's the ROI? And so when I'm investigating tools, I'm asking them, have you got case studies? What's the ROI? How much time is this going to save? How much money is this going to save? How is it going to reduce my cost per hire? So I think coming with those questions when analyzing tools so that you can keep your CFO happy when those questions pop up is also a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a good exercise. Thinking like the CFO always.
We had a few questions come in just clarifying some of the tools that we recommended there. Like I say, we're not sponsored by any of them, but it was Modern Loop that you're using, right, Elena?
Yeah. I saw someone actually send the link. Yes, that's the one, modernloop.io, and Gem for sourcing. And the other is LinkedIn Recruiter, and Greenhouse for my ATS. So yeah,
there's one that I've seen a lot of noise about recently as well, which is called MetaView, and it sits over your ATS and takes the notes from your screening calls and interviews and then summarizes it, which I think is really interesting, and I've seen it jump up in kind of top tools lists. So I can't recommend it because I haven't had a demo yet, but if we're talking about productivity and efficiency, when I was recruiting, typing up my notes, my scorecards was a big time spend, and it's a really obvious way to make that workflow more efficient. So if that's successful, I think the risk there is the inherent bias in AI. We've learned that AI is biased, and I think they're working through that, but I think that could be interesting.
We're all biased, so we obviously gave that further to anything that we created. So but being mindful of that. It's so funny, we actually use a tool for that. I completely forgot because it's been in our tech stack for a while, but it's called Bright Hire, and it's also addressing note taking. So that's been actually, for my recruiters, not so much. I think it's just because we're so used to just being able to have a conversation while typing. That's a skill that you develop as a recruiter. But for my interviewers, it's been a pretty impressive game changer, because they can truly focus on that conversation with the candidate and not, make sure that they type everything. But you can highlight like very, good responses that stood out to you, or maybe some red flags, and just go for kind of the highlights. And that's been really helpful, especially in debriefs, to be able to pull that out and say like, well, this stood out, this was a bit of a red flag, let's see what others have uncovered. So it definitely made them I would say more effective as interviewers.
Someone in my team actually had an idea with using AI chatbot when it came to debriefs, and it was to put all of the scorecards copy and pasted into ChatGPT and use the prompt to say summarize all of these in a few sentences. And so you could then have a uniform or a combined sentiment about a candidate, just summarized from all of the
that's such a great idea. I might steal that.
That's it. And I thought it was really interesting, because then when you're coming to a debrief, obviously the bias and you have to kind of control the narrative. And I think starting with, okay, here is some overall sentiment, and kind of break it down from there. So I haven't had a chance to test that, but it's an interesting way to use it.
Yeah, I think I'll try it and I'll let you know.
Okay, cool. We've only got a few minutes left. Is there any other questions? You can use the chat or Q&A. Which scheduling tools have come out on top? We're reviewing some at the moment. So I think we mentioned Modern Loop, but I think there's some others.
I don't really know about others. We've been kind of stuck in the past until recently, just using, we had Lever as our ATS, so we just used their scheduling capabilities, which wasn't, super effective. And that's why we started looking at other tools. I can't remember the other ones that we assessed, but we landed on Modern Loop because they were highly recommended by recruiting leaders. And so obviously that carries a lot of weight for me. So they have recruiting leaders on their product development team as advisors. So I know it's made for recruiters, right? Like by recruiters for recruiters. Yeah. So that was a big selling point for me. But I can't remember the other ones.
There is one other, and I can't remember the name of it, but Modern Loop I've heard really positive things about. It's on the tip of my tongue, but there is others out there. Calendly is also expanding its product offering. Eka said email automation tools or LinkedIn messaging automation tools.
We use Gem for our outreaches. That's really, we create our campaigns and make sure we run everything through Gem. And that's kind of coming back to, making sure your tech stack makes sense across the board. So, we're definitely using that capability because it's our CRM and everything. It just makes sense for us.
I just had Kelsey in my team. She knew what I was trying to think of. It's good time.
Yes.
Good time.
Thank you, Kelsey.
And Maruna says, it sounds like where you can get the best bang for your buck and AI is at the top of the recruiting funnel, where you're dealing with large volumes of information while allowing the recruiters to focus their efforts at the bottom. Is this an accurate statement?
I would say yes, for the most part. I think obviously sourcing and, reaching out, that takes a lot of time. So those are kind of the obvious, kind of areas that you would want to automate, make more efficient. But I think it's just throughout the process, throughout the recruiting process. It's just figuring out what works for you. Because I think I said most companies kind of, the interview process are basically the same, but there are obviously differences. And I think creating that experience for your candidate that is, truly reflective of your company and you as a person, I think that's where, again, kind of that human in the loop. But I would say if you're using AI, those are the obvious areas, but there are some, throughout the funnel. But yes, definitely bottom of the funnel, no, I wouldn't touch that. I would still keep that very relationship based, but anything up to that point, I think it's fair game. So yeah.
Well, we just hit time. Thank you so much, Elena. That was really fun. I felt like we were just chatting. I wasn't even really aware that there was a bunch of people in the virtual room.
Yeah, well, thank you all for joining and listening to us. I hope it was helpful. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me, Evie.
Yeah, thank you. All right, bye everybody.